So good day today and welcome to my show, A Moment with Dr.Ayesha Mughees on Galaxy Radio Namibia. During the last week of February, we heard about the reverse racist approach adopted by the Coca-Cola Company, social media platform LinkedIn, and Big Think. Robin DiAngelo, the author of the book White Fragility, was also accused of being the creator of the slides on the topic to be less white. Reportedly, Coca-Cola urged its employees to indulge in a diversity training program accessible on LinkedIn Learning. The slides were part of curriculum offered by LinkedIn Learning. After a backlash, Coca-Cola and Robin DiAngelo uploaded statements in their defense on their websites. Robin turned down all rumors by saying she was unaware of the fact that her name and images were being used in this way. Further claimed that she was not the creator or facilitator of the slides and that Big Think licensed it to LinkedIn. Meanwhile, the Coca-Cola Company stated that the slides were not part of the company's curriculum and that the employees had access to it because it was present on LinkedIn Learning. With this, we have Tim Goldick all the way from the United States of America to confabulate on this topic. So Tim, yes, please take a moment to speak on this. Over to you.
The problem is that you see, if you judge any group, sort of hold them under a high-powered judgment microscope, the biggest problem is with the judgment microscope itself, you see, because what you end up with is a moral polarity. We create this moral polarity where the empowered are bad and the victimized are good. They are innocent victims. It's really not a good, healthy path to take for a much better approach and outlook. Go to Martin Luther King, I don't judge a man by the color of his skin, I judge him by the quality of his character. That's real wisdom. That's a step up, see, from this group of humans are good and this group of humans are bad. And it doesn't matter that in that moral polarity, which is false, it's not about which group is good and which group is bad. It's a matter of one group has one set of circumstances that it lives under and the other group has another. And circumstances shift. For quite a long time in early modern Europe, high Islam held sway. So blacks had the power and whites were very often victimized. So that means that the blacks are bad and the whites are good? No, it just means that historically the circumstances, who's the oppressor and who's the oppressed, exchange places. You see, King, he wasn't trying to create this moral polarity of blacks are good and white are bad. He knows that that's just destructive. Inherently, it's a bad path. It doesn't end well, like ever. And you see, it's bad all around. I mean, it's not just that the empowered are judged so harshly. It's also that whatever we've identified as the victims, then that becomes their poison. You see, is to be to internalize victim, and that's emotionally self-fulfilling. So.
Thank you so much, Tim. And yes, so living in the United States of America, everyone knows of Martin Luther King, the black rights activist, or shall I say, a equalist, was a head honcho, luminary, and a tutelary deity of the blacks. And I felicitate the white US government who introduced his book into our syllabus when I was studying at an elementary school in the United States of America in Iowa State. And I believe that's a huge step on part of a nation not harboring too many blacks. But this gesture is justifiable and was introduced when it was needed the most. Also, we must not erase this off our minds that the US also elected Barack Obama as their first black president of America, which does explain the meticulous ways of majority of the whites which they have now adopted and come in terms with after the realization of how this previous racist approach affected the minds and polluted it with impunity. Okay, so let me just read out what was there inside the slides quickly. This is what the slides say. To be less white is to be less oppressive, be less arrogant, be less certain, be less defensive, be more humble. Listen, believe, break with apathy, break with white solidarity. Now this entire slide indirectly is trying to say that the whites are more oppressive, they're more arrogant, they're more certain, more defensive, less humble, they do not listen or believe, and so on. So right now we have the CEO of Galaxy Radio Namibia, Tanya Smith, with us here, who is from the continent of Africa and is based in Namibia. So Tanya, does reverse racism exist? Because what the world only knows of is that the blacks have been mistreated by the whites. So how are things in Africa, a continent that is harbored by the blacks in majority and the whites in minority?
Well, my point of view in the whole story is the fact that they tried to be relevant with saying that. They tried to bring across a certain view of people, generalizing a certain race, which I feel is so unfair, because us as white people, as soon as we generalize, it is seen as racism, and people believe that reverse racism does not exist. It does. Come to Africa and can see what reverse racism is. The same problems that black people in America are struggling with, white people are struggling with in Africa, especially South Africa. Now, I'm not saying white people were ever correct or right in the way that they handled apartheid and all of that, but putting the burden on the ancestors' grandkids who had absolutely nothing to do with it is also not fair, because then you are just as bad as the previous people who were in charge of apartheid and racism were, because you're basically turning into them. The best thing that we could do, the best revenge ever, would be to actually just come together as humans, because doing unto white what whites did unto blacks back in the day is just as bad as what they used to do. So two wrongs don't make a right. That's basically my point of view on this. I don't understand why it had to be a be less white, because to be less white means not to be proud of my skin color. A personality trait does not go with your skin color. I know black people that fit the description of what they said white behavior was like. I know Indian people, I know Chinese people with exactly the same traits. I know Nigerians with exactly the same traits. So generalization, I think, is the biggest problem this world faces.
Thank you so much, Tanya Smith. That was the CEO of Galaxy Radio Namibia, seeing the stolid indifference as the blacks attacked at the farm towns of whites in South Africa and killed them after mentally and physically torturing them. Those who survived were found flummoxed and full of fear. It is a basic need to dissolve these racial differences, this disparity or relativity that has perdured from the past centuries into the present generation. One should avoid protracting it further down to the coming generations. We also need to correct our speech and speak with great ardor, thereby forgiving human foibles. So we all know now that reverse racism does exist. There is need for everyone to be equal mistreatment towards any color, race, or individual in general. With this is Dr. Ayesha Mughees signing off until next time. Goodbye.